Okay, I have no idea what part I'm on for this one, but... Rije stood in the small kitchen of the palace, chopping herbs the knights had brought her from their morning patrol of the city's perimeter. Perimeter. I cannot even talk right now if I just started this. Jesus. She made short work of it, gathering the herbs on the cutting board and scraping them into the pot, along with onions and bacon and other delights. She left it to simmer, the aroma filling the kitchen. It was a small space only ever used for making breakfast, and therefore completely deserted at night. Rachel glanced over her shoulder. Are you sure you don't want to wait back in my chambers? Arnold sat on a wooden chair in the corner, leaning against the bare table beside him with his head in his hand as he watched Rachel make the soup. No, I'm fine here. If you say so. This couldn't be exciting, could it? He just sat there watching as she attacked her dyed hair with hot water and a towel. Maybe he just likes people watching, she thought, as she stirred the soup. Sensing it was done, she scooped some out into a small dish and tried it. After a moment of silence, she added salt. She stirred it again and tasted it. She squeezed her eyes shut, poured in some water, adding pepper once it was boiling, then some more chopped herbs just in case before trying it again. The taste brought her quickly to her senses. What have I done? Regret swelled inside her. What a terrible decision made purely out of exhaustion. Inviting the Crown Prince to a kitchen so late and then making him soup. Your Highness, Riche passed the bowl of soup from hand to hand. I'm going to apologize in advance. Advance of what? Wandering around the city again in the middle of the night? Well, yes, I apologize for that as well. Just, I should have thought this through, so I feel really bad about it, but she took a deep breath to ready herself for the admission. Admitting weakness to a former enemy was difficult, not to mention embarrassing. Indeed, she was only doing it to prevent greater misfortune down the road. She struggled to find the right words. Finally, she managed to look Arnold in the eye and let out a strangled, I'm bad at cooking. Oh? A fleeting look passed over his face, one Riche had never seen before. It was gone too fast for her to divine its meaning. Is that so? I invited you here out of hunger and exhaustion, and I've made a huge mess of things. I shouldn't have offered. I'm so sorry. Well, I admit I was a bit confused, Arnold said. I don't know any noblewomen who can cook. Fair enough, Riche trailed off. In her previous lives, she ate primarily to keep herself alive. She preferred food that tasted good, of course, but she'd take time to sleep over the time spent preparing a good meal. In her last life as a knight, she would at most boil a potato and add some salt. Easy. From her time as an apothecary, Riche knew that brewing medicines and cooking weren't that different. You just added the right ingredients in the right quantities, chopping and boiling in a pot rather than a beaker. On the other hand, cooking was intrinsically different. You wanted it to actually taste good, and to do that, you needed to understand how to marry the flavors involved and the methods by which to enhance them. She wouldn't have cared if she was the only one eating the soup. She had gone this far with making this meal, but she felt too ashamed to feed it to Arnold as well. It took so long, and now it won't be good. Arnold said nothing. I'll go fetch you something more edible from the main kitchens. Just hold on a bit longer. Then we can talk about the aria. Before she could finish, Arnold stood up, grabbed the dish from Riche, and tasted the soup all in one fluid motion. Hey! Riche's surprise momentarily delayed her reaction speed. Ignoring her dismay, Arnold said, This is actually pretty good. She gawked at him. What? Really? I mean, from the way you were tasting it, it seemed like it didn't taste very good to you. So, is he just being nice? Or or is she just too hard on herself? Arnold finished off the rest of the dish. I'm fine with soup. You're lying. I don't believe you. Riche tried the soup again. It was just bad. Certainly not worthy of praise and definitely not something to serve a prince. Or anyone else for that matter. He's just being nice. Why would he pretend to like it? A memory popped into her head. Arnold standing on the balcony and drinking the capsicum-tainted wine. It was just spicy, but still not very drinkable. Is there something wrong with his taste buds? Hey, you're thinking something unflattering about me, he pouted. I can tell. Riche, with a rush of fresh embarrassment, realized that Arnold was trying to be kind. She floundered for a beat. Thank you, she said rather nonsensically. You have me starving. Let's get the dishes out. Moving automatically, Riche quickly set the table. After that, there was nothing to do but dine on the unique soup. Typically, Riche spent her meals alone. She'd never eaten with Arnold before, even during their journey. He was always busy with something or another, he be it paperwork or directing the nights. This scene took on a sense of unreality. Eating bad soup with the prince in the middle of the night. Either something wrong with your taste buds or something wrong with his taste buds. Or maybe both, who knows? They chatted a bit as they ate. When they were finished, Rishi felt sufficiently recovered to finally discuss the situation, the whole reason Arnold had come. Despite that, she insisted on clearing the dishes first. Basically, I need them to agree to my unreasonable orders, and to do that, I must make them a profit. A rather vague explanation of her plan, but surely that was better than a long and boring one. Arnold was frowning, so she added, the Aria Trading Company wants to expand its influence worldwide into a leading business, you see. I predict they'll acquire unique, otherwise unattainable goods as they expand their trading routes. Their track record over the past 2 years supports that, or so I've heard, Arnold agreed. I want their cooperation. That's why I contacted them, but they declined my business because my goals are opaque. Therefore, I suggested different terms. Which are, Arnold asked with some trepidation. I have 1 week to bring Mr. Tully a business idea that will be popular in the Imperial capital. If I can meet his standards, he'll make me into a trading partner. Hearing this unvarnished explanation, Arnold subsided into silence. No doubt he wanted a more robust story, but just like with Tully, Riche couldn't tell him everything. Arnold was the one who was going to start the war she sought to prevent. She couldn't afford him catching on to her motives. Dude, why don't you just talk to Arnold? Surely you have heard something about what had caused the war in your previous life. And once you figure that out, talk to him, figure out and make it so that he doesn't do it in the first place. Then you prevent it from happening. I mean, you know what's going to happen. Why don't you try and prevent it? Surely you should be able to do that because, you're going to be his wife. Surely you would have some say in what he does with that sort of thing, right? Or at least he would want your opinion on it. She braced herself for his response, but all he said was, fine. Huh? She blurted, staring at him. Fine, I said. I understand your aims. Rishi didn't know what to say. You're not going to ask me what my plans are for the Aria Trading Company? You suggested there was other terms instead because you're hiding something, right? And I doubt you want to tell me. Well, you're right. You won't tell me, so why bother to ask? More pressingly, what deal do you plan to offer him? He touched a sore spot. Rishi hung her head. I have a few ideas, but nothing foolproof. I don't know the area or the consumer base. I haven't been here long enough to know what's popular. That kind of investigation took time, which Tully knew as well as she did, hence the short deadline. In other words, this will cause you difficulty. Yes. His tone held something she couldn't glean, and she looked over to find him grinning slyly. I look forward to watching this play out. I knew it! Risha couldn't see through to Arnold's true intentions, but she was beginning to notice a pattern. He still looked good, even when he was smirking arrogantly, the bastard. Risha stewed in her annoyance as Arnold rose from his seat. Like I've told you before, you're free to do whatever you like. I'll retire to the main palace. Very well, have a good night. In the doorway, he looked back. Riche, have you met my brother yet? Your brother? This was the first she'd heard of him. No, I don't think I have. Well, I suppose it's possible since I don't know what he looks like. Good, Arnold hesitated. Should he approach you, I ask that you avoid speaking to him any way you can. His name is Theodore, right? May I ask why I shouldn't speak with him? It wasn't exactly an amicable way to act toward a future brother-in-law. It's better if you don't know. Rachel was quiet for a moment. If that's what you want. Arnold left, closing the door behind him. Didn't she already meet Theodore? Or maybe I'm wrong. I could have swore I remembered her running into him at some point. Because it's been a while since I've read the book, so, The next day, Risha headed out to her garden, despairing over how best to begin her investigation into her business plan. Just then, voices rang out behind her, catching her off guard. My lady, please, you must return to your chambers at once. His Highness will be so angry, please, I beg you. Risha surveyed the knights as they tripped over each other in concern. What in the world? A boy lay sprawled in the freshly tilled dirt, apparently napping. Risha did not recognize him from any of her many lives. He had hair as black as Arnold's, and even asleep he radiated an androgynous beauty. I'm guessing that's Theodore. Bewildered, she muttered, and I just finished tilling the soil, too. My lady, a knight yelped, that's not the issue. He was right. Black hair was unusual on this continent, so it was obvious who this boy was. That's His Royal Highness, Prince Theodore. I thought so. The beautiful boy was snoozing away in the dirt was indeed Arnold's little brother. I can't believe I have to deal with him literally the day after Arnold warned me not to. I know, it sucks. Just freaking bad timing. She'd never known of Theodore's existence before this life. Coming from abroad, she had no reason to study the makeup of the Goghain imperial family. All she knew about the boy was that what she had heard since she arrived. If I remember correctly, he's 4 years younger than Prince Arnold, which means he's 15, like me. There were 6 children in the Goghain imperial family. Arnold and Theodore were the only male heirs, which meant the other 4 were all princesses. Theodore began to stir, sending the knights back into a fuss. Lady Riche, please, you must leave at once. The boy murmured, does someone say Riche? Oops. Oopsie! Whoops, you didn't think you'd hear that. The knight slapped a hand over his mouth as his partner smacked him from behind. Theodore's eyelids fluttered open in response to hearing Riche's name. They were the same blue as Arnold's, reflecting in the sky. He put up an arm to ward off the sun, looking up at her. You're my brother's... It seemed he did know about her. It is an honor to make your acquaintance, Prince Theodore. I am so sorry I haven't greeted you before now, Riche smiled warmly, despite choosing her words with all appropriate caution. My name is Riche Irmgard Weltzner. As fate would have it, I shall soon join the imperial household. Flawed as I am, I will do my utmost to be a valuable member of your family. More like a lazy member of the family, but I digress. Theodore blinked at her sleepily. She prayed the knights wouldn't overreact again. I didn't expect a warm welcome. Riche was a hostage after all. From Goghain's point of view, she was nothing more than a duke's daughter from a minor nation. As she awaited what move he'd make, Theodore sat up and smiled. It's nice to meet you, my radiant sister-in-law. Riche's eyes fluttered in surprise. His grinning face was unbelievably pretty, almost feminine. What a stroke of luck we've meeting like this. I sent my brother so many notes, but he never replied. Although, now that I see you, I understand why he'd want to keep such a lovely lady all to himself. What, were you planning on taking her for yourself or something? Well, I mean, the two of you are the same age, but still. You flatter me, your highness. He laughed, delighted. Please, no formalities. Be at ease. His smile was frank and friendly. These two brothers are like night and day. They were both exceptionally handsome, but Theodore's bearing was utterly in contrast. She might not have guessed they were related if she hadn't already known. Their features are the same in color, but their eyes and lips are just so different. Their manners certainly don't match either. Whoopsie, can't shake your hand if I got all this dirt on me. Theodore rose to his feet, brushing the soil off himself. He was a bit taller than Riche, but much shorter than Arnold. I'm Theodore Augustus Hein, Arnold's little brother and second in line for the throne. Theodore held out his hand. Riche returned his friendly grin as she shook it. A pleasure, your highness. From the corner of her eye, Riche marked the knight's nerves. They'd likely been ordered to keep Riche and Theodore apart, yet they couldn't openly force Riche away from him. What brings you to this corner of the grounds? I myself was on a walk when I was overcome with drowsiness, Theodore said. Ah, actually this is my field. It is? Theodore's eyes widened. That's incredible. The soil around here is usually so hard. The spot gets the perfect amount of sun, and you can hear the birds too. The plants will no doubt love it as much as I do. How gracious of you to say. I was planning to begin seeding today, your highness. Then I can't sleep here again, huh? His grin turned cheeky. Oh, I want to ask you something. Theodore crouched down and pointed. Would you mind taking a look at this? Is something wrong? Come here and look. That's strange, isn't it? He was pointing at what appeared to be a completely ordinary patch of dirt. What are you planning on doing, dude? He's planning something, because why else would he be pointing at a nothing, essentially? Riche crouched down to get a closer look, and that was when Theodore whispered to her, I want to save you, Riche Irmgard Weltzner. Huh? Save you? Save her from what? She didn't reply at first, and Theodore looked at her with reverent sincerity. I pity you, dragged all the way here, not as a bride, but as a captive. As far as I know, no empress has ever led a happy life in Goghain. With his back turned to the knights, his pleasant expression melted off his face like ice. I want to speak to you somewhere away from prying eyes. Riche sighed. Your highness. A strange zeal filled Theodore's captivating eyes. I'll tell you how you can run away from him. Riche knew very little about the Godkind imperial family. Perhaps this was one of the inciting incidents that would land Arnold in a war. Or specifically, Theodore was. In which case, it would be in her interest to accept his offer to meet in secret. However, Riche smiled. Prince Arnold warned me not to subject myself to unnecessary dangers. What? As it so happens, he scolded me about it just last night, Riche explained modestly. I can't allow myself to be alone with another man. It would be imprudent. Just imagine the rumors. Yeah. Theodore gaped at her, then quickly hid it behind a scowl. You don't know who my brother really is, how he acts when he has a sword in his hand, how ruthless he is on the battlefield. Believe me, I am quite aware of who he is. And not just that, but you never know, he might try to kill... Yes, I know. Riche knew it so well, she relived it in her dreams. She stood back up with an indulgent smile. There's nothing wrong here, Your Highness. I would ask you to leave the field as you found it. She said it loudly for the benefit of the knights, so as to make it seem their whole chat had been one about the soil. Theodore was still crouched, but the ugly expression had vanished from his pretty face. Just now he reminded me of his brother. Well, Arnold possessed a degree more subtlety. He wouldn't have lured her over in such an obvious way. He doesn't seem hostile toward me, but every mention of his brother sets him on edge. In calling himself second in line for the throne, there's no way to introduce yourself to your older brother's fiancée. Theodore had emphasized Arnold's ruthlessness. He wanted Riche to fear him. I know what Arnold Hind is like on the battlefield, but to speak that way of your own brother? Wait. A thought struck her. Why am I so angry about this? It shouldn't have mattered to her what Arnold's little brother said about him. She curtsied to Theodore with all due ceremony as she contemplated this curiosity. I must fetch my hoe to loosen the soil now that it has flattened. By your leave, Your Highness. After waiting for a response she didn't receive, Riche started to walk away, leaving the prince to stare at the ground. The knights bowed as well before following her. Hopefully this was enough to set something in motion. After this conversation, she was certain Arnold himself was the reason she hadn't yet been introduced to the royal family. Let's see. Prince Theodore, 4 sisters, the Empress, and the current Emperor. I want to speak to him the most, but without even a basic introduction, that seemed like it'd be a long way off. She turned this over in her mind and remembered Arnold's orders from last night. Don't talk to my brother. Clearly neither of them thought favorably of the other, but that wasn't rare for siblings, was it? Why would Arnold warn me? He might have been afraid Prince Theodore would harm me, or perhaps he fears Prince Theodore and I will join forces and conspire against him. No, maybe it really is to keep Theodore from doing something nefarious to me. Why would Arnold prioritize Riche over his own brother, though? She looked back thoughtfully at the knights as they followed her down the cloister between her wing and the main palace. Tell me, did the princes get along well? The answer was obvious, but the knights looked shaken all the same. My lady, I'm afraid it is not our place to judge such matters. I suppose not, Riche hummed. Then were you ordered to make sure I stay away from Prince Theodore? It is not our place to say, he repeated. Their evasion was answer enough, and Riche felt a little guilty manipulating them. My apologies. I know it's an odd question. I'll arrange for a ration of spirits to be sent to the barracks this evening. You're too kind, my lady, one said eagerly. We're all grateful for your refreshment, said another. Everyone always talks about how remarkably well you seem to understand us. She laughed. Of course she understood them. She had first-hand experience with the knightly mind. Regardless, I do need information. If they won't speak openly with me, I'll be forced to use another method. A familiar voice drifted over from around the corner. Arrange for the troops. I'll contact you shortly about the organization of the platoon. Oh? Riche rounded a bend and found herself at the training ground. There she spotted Arnold. He was speaking with a man on the verge of old age. Riche remembered him. He was a count who worked in military affairs. She'd met him at the banquet. The count stood with 2 knights, facing Arnold with an air of discontent. With all due respect, Your Highness, this large allocation of troops hardly seems necessary. Expanding so much of the treasury to protect the common population will displease the nobility. The nobility have their own private armies, Arnold said, and we already provide them with the financial means to maintain these armies. If they still think that's not enough, let them complain. Your Highness, I beg you to reconsider. Your father will surely disapprove. Arnold's glare was chilly. Enough. You've made your opinion known. Just follow my orders. Riche could feel the force of Arnold's amenity from here. It made her gasp even though she was nowhere near. Such a palpable tension in the air. almost numbing. The knights accompanying her grew noticeably nervous. Arnold looked over. Across the distance, their eyes locked. He's practically challenging me to see if I have something to add. A bit unpleasant if you ask me. Riche had nothing. From where she stood, Arnold's judgment was sound. She just wanted to show her support. She took a moment to decide how best to convey that before raising her fist and clenching it, twisting her features into a slightly overblown scowl. Give them hell, your highness. I hope he catches my drift. Despite how deadly serious Riche had been, Arnold frowned. Oh no, he didn't get it. Darn. What's another way to show I support him? She racked her brain trying to come up with another idea, but all it did was elicit a sigh from the prince. Then he cracked a smile. So gentle was his expression that it instantly put Riche on guard. If she had been wearing her sword, she would have reflexively drawn it. In her defense, it was probably the emotional whiplash. He had seemed so toweringly angry with the Count, and now he looked like he didn't have a care in the world. Why in the world is he looking at me like that? He likes you. Why else would he have asked you to be his frickin' wife? You interested him. More than probably anybody else had. The suffocating tension had drained from the training ground. Arnold's expression was smooth as he said to the Count, I shall send out a missive if and when the nobility causes problems. A missive? We need to persuade them that protecting the common citizens of this nation is to their benefit, yes? By offering them military strength and sending these knights out on patrol to keep the people safe, that should bring about a difference in their final tax yields. Will it? The Count looked confused. If the people can't focus on their work, tend to their families, and raise their children in an environment with ample public security, then the nobles will be thrilled when they receive more in taxes. Arnold explained patiently. The Count opened his mouth to object, then hung his head in dejection. By that logic, you may be able to quell the voices of dissatisfaction. Then I'll go ahead and calculate how much it will take to persuade them. Dismissed. Arnold turned on his heel and walked away. Riche heaved a heavy sigh when he was out of sight. Her shoulders ached from the tension. I'm not sure what happened just now, but I'm glad it seems to be defensive instead of warmongering. God, it's incredible how much destruction beautiful people can cause with a single look. Glancing at the knights, she saw they were smiling for some reason. They were odd smiles, rather fond and directed her way. She cocked her head in bemusement. At any rate, I need to look into Theodore and Arnold's relationship. I hope to work on my business proposal today, but that will have to wait. With that, Riche went off to gather intelligence. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Those two? Why, I hear they barely spent time together, even when they were small, veteran maid told Riche. Riche was at the wash house doing laundry in her maid disguise. Now that she'd donned a pair of spectacles in a brisk manner, no one was any wiser. Really? She responded casually, sorting through the laundry, even though they live in the same palace? A gaggle of maids around Riche's mother's age chimed in. That's right. According to the footmen who were served during meals, the family never eats together. It's got to be true based on how much they complain about getting the dining hall ready. I heard that the princes won't even greet each other in the halls. That's just a rumor, though, another added. They're both so handsome, surely they'd be a picture stood together. The women giggled among themselves, the confidence of a decade's service putting them at ease. Why are they so distant at their family? Riche asked, feigning idle curiosity. The women cocked their own heads in puzzlement. That's a good question. Prince Theodore does seem to have some fondness for his older brother. Oh? Just between you and me, I heard he covets Prince Arnold's imperial guards as his own. Riche paused. Little brothers always want to copy their big brothers, down to studying the same things even. Prince Theodore does seem to love the crown prince. Is that why he wanted to talk to me? To copy Arnold? That doesn't make sense. As for the four princesses, they don't even live in the imperial capital. The last time they'll see each other will be at Prince Arnold's wedding. Speaking of, a maid said, that fiancé of his sure is something. Right, new girl? Riche looked up. Huh? Whatever do you mean? I haven't seen you before, so you must be a maid from the palace. From her palace. I was worried when I heard she's only taking on new girls. But all seems to be well. I think it's great that these newbies are learning the ropes so quickly. I agree. Riche was always happy to hear her maids praised. Miss Diana and the others are great teachers. We've been learning so much. It's quite amazing how they've devised a system that could only work in that style of detached wing. Riche had only overseen things for the first 2 days. The inexperienced maids were focused and dedicated, thriving in their new positions, and Diana's squad was performing well in their roles as teachers. Instead of mocking mistakes, they took it as a challenge to figure out a better teaching method for the future. When the girls were done with their work for the day, they focused on studying. Each maid turned teacher was figuring out her own individual style to be proud of. One excelled at detailed explanations, while another had a talent for drawing and diagrams. The inventive ones, good at scolding or praising, came up with new methods to encourage their students to follow in their footsteps. Riche instructed the maids on their work for about 2 hours a day now, but soon she'd be able to hand the reins over to Diana completely. And once the cleaning up of the detached palace was finished, Arnold would be joining her. Riche didn't know how she felt about that. Speaking of the detached palace, have you heard? One of the maids asked Riche. Heard what? Prince Arnold went to call on Lady Riche just last night. Riche jumped with such a start that she nearly dropped her laundry. The maid's intelligence network was unparalleled, which is why she had come here for information in the first place, but she hadn't expected this. You work at the detached palace now, right, new girl? Do you know about that? Lady Riche went to bed early. She wasn't feeling well, Riche stammered. I don't think the prince would have gone to see her if she was ill. Oh, how boring. Well, let us know if you hear anything. My daughters badger me every night for the latest gossip. To think Prince Arnold will finally be wed. All the young girls in the city are talking about it. But it's not just the young girls either, is it? We're talking about them too. All the maids laughed at that. Riche focused on keeping her face marble smooth as she washed, determined not to let the chatty maids discover who she really was. After gathering sufficient information during her recon laundry duty, Riche returned to her room by way of the rope still hanging down into the courtyard. Once inside, she changed her clothes and left her chambers. She proceeded to her garden, escorted by her guards. She'd once again tilled the ground Theodore had flattened with her trusty hoe, and today she was finally going to plant her seeds. Riche pressed a finger into the moist earth up to her second joint, dropping 2 seeds into each hole. She made. She then gently covered them with dirt and dampened the surface. She figured she would see sprouts within the next few days with the current weather. Daydreaming about a lovely future lush with herbs, Riche allowed her guards to escort her back to her chambers. She moved sedately as a crown princess ought, but on the inside she was twisting with mounting anxiety. It's so late already, I have to scrub off this mud in the bath and come up with a deal from Mr. Tully. I hear there's a library in the Imperial Palace. Perhaps I can learn something about the populace there. The gender ratio, age brackets, number of shops, and I can gather information about Prince Theodore while I'm at it. She piled more and more things onto her to-do list. Diana called me to take a look at the new teaching material she's come up with. Also, I need to start planning the wedding and putting some strategies in place for dealing with guests from abroad, and then... Lady Riche, are you quite well? Yes, I'm fine. Riche's eyes had gone glassy and far away as they climbed the stairs to her chambers, but she was determined to conquer her obligations. I can't wait to have an empty schedule. I'm going to be lazy and sleep in until noon every day so I can live a long life. All this scheming is to ensure I finally live past 20. She looked at the floor as she walked. Before she knew it, they had reached her chambers. She glanced up to see guards flanking the door. We shall stand guard here for you, my lady. Please be at ease. Thank you, Riche opened the door and stopped short. An envelope crinkled under her feet. Someone must have slid it underneath the door. Is something the matter, my lady? No. She thought for a moment, then shook her head and stepped inside in a way that kept the curious item hidden from their view. Alone at last, she picked it up. It bore the seal of the Galkan imperial family, pressed into red wax. Inside she found a card. Written in a beautiful hand were the words, I'll tell you my secrets. Meet me in the chapel at 9 o'clock tonight. Arnold Hine. Huh? In silence, Riche put the letter back into its envelope. She then summoned Elsie to help her prepare. Dressed in a black gown, Riche arrived at the secluded chapel at 9 o'clock, just as ordered. When she'd shown them the official seal on her letter, her guards agreed to take up position outside the chapel walls, understanding that their mistress wished to be alone with her fiancé. How do we know that was Arnold, though, who sent it? That could have been Theodore. I knew it! Inside, the only illumination was moonlight through the stained glass windows. The man behind the letter was already waiting for her. Riche stared at the entrance and called out a name that did not belong to her future husband. Good evening, Prince Theodore. I knew it! I thought that might be the case, because why would Arnold tell his secrets? A soft laugh reached her. A good evening to you as well, my lovely sister-in-law. The boy stood at the end of a long red carpet, just as she had predicted. You don't seem surprised to see me. I suppose you knew it was me all along, Theodore said with a smile. Riche gave a shallow sigh. Your forgery wasn't very good. Prince Arnold didn't sign that note. I had assumed you wouldn't have seen his signature before, Theodore said. How odd. Theodore was right. She hadn't seen it in this life. But in previous lives, Arnold had sent declarations of war to each nation. She'd never forget that document after all the times she'd seen it. Arnold's penmanship was good, but his signature was messy. The signature in the letter she had received had been comparatively too neat. Why did you come here if you knew I was the sender? Weren't you the one who said you wouldn't put yourself in a position to be alone with another man? Oh, that must be why you haven't shut the doors. That, and my guards are outside. She'd taken additional measures too, but he didn't need to know about those. Theodore played with the lock of his hair, looking bored. I was hoping we could be friends, Lady Riche. I have invaluable information for you. My brother has very strange tastes. Is that what you wanted to tell me? Riche asked briskly. Said briskly, please keep it brief. The other day you claimed you knew how ruthless my brother could be. His clear voice took on a sinister note. But you're wrong. If you did know, you wouldn't be so calm. He took a step toward Riche. No one in her family is close, you see. Her Majesty, our father's current emperor, isn't our biological mother. She's a second wife. That's not unusual among royals. Is it not? Is it per the usual, then, for a man's son to kill his previous wife? Huh? So, did Arnold kill his mother? A fierce light shone in his eyes the same color as Arnold's. He came closer, a bewitching smile growing on his face. My brother killed our mother, but of course you know that. You know just how ruthless he is. You were, enticed here by the title of Crown Princess, but you're better off leaving the likes of him. Do you understand? He's the sort of man who would kill his own mother. I'm assuming there was a reason for that. I am curious about that. What is the reason? Maybe we'll find out at some point. Riche was silent. The women who marry into our family lead unhappy lives. I hope now you understand better what I meant. This isn't a mere threat. You may very well be murdered by your husband. I was wondering what you had summoned me here to say. Riche stared at him for a few moments, then sighed again. Is that it? Theodore took a stunned step back, panic briefly flickering over his face. He murdered his own mother. How can you be so calm after hearing something so repulsive? Because I've already seen his criminal record. I know exactly what he'll do in the future. After killing his father and ascending the throne, Arnold will mobilize his nation's army. He would invade countless nations and murder their royal families as well. He would crush those who opposed him on the front lines, annihilating dissenters. Then he would kill Riche. She'd made her choice with clear eyes. Come what may, I will marry Prince Arnold. Theodore gaped at her. Now that I think about it, there's something I've only just learned by being here. She'd witnessed Arnold's nature up close, and seen on the outside he at least appeared decent. He was unfriendly and lukewarm, but he had a political mind that he'd put to work taking care of those who relied on him, as well as his citizens. And still, she did not have her answer. Why in the world does he start a war? What would go wrong in the next few years that would cause such drastic a change? Or was he just adept at hiding his monstrous nature, which would break free from its cage in 5 years? So I guess she doesn't know what caused it in the first place. Okay. That's why she doesn't try and stop it. Wait, what if his hand will be forced? What if he's a pawn in someone else's game? Riche grinned. I truly am a fool. Theodore shrank back from her smile. Haven't you noticed how Arnold has no middle name? That's because my mother and father didn't bless him at his birth. They didn't want him. He's cursed. What use is a middle name truly? Sure, I have Irmgard, but mine is hardly worth commenting on. Prince Theodore Augusta Hein? Are you quite finished? Riche looked up at him, unblinking. If so, I'll be on my way. Riche turned back on the threshold. Instead, wait, Theodore cried. You brothers have a nice chat, she finished. Oh? Oh, dear. Arnold found them! Theodore, you're in deep, deep duty. You're in deep shit right now. Theodore's voice died in his throat. At the door stood Arnold, cold radiating off him in waves. Brother, Theodore gulped, why are you here of all places? Wait, did you come here for her? He ran on Riche, taking a stumbling step backward. His expression slipped from annoyance to dismay as he looked up at his brother. You don't understand, I wasn't being serious. It was just a joke. She's going to be my sister, so I just wanted to scare her a little. Theodore? The boy flinched. Did I not order you to stay away from Riche? So he doesn't even... Does he even really believe what he's saying? Or is he just backtracking because... he's gonna get in trouble. Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. Did I not order you to stay away from Riche? Theodore quailed under Arnold's gaze, the fathomless cold. His face was utterly blank, but somehow it held so much malice that it was as if a sword was pointed at Theodore's throat. Theodore hung his head trembling as he forced out the words, "I'm sorry, brother." He looked away with indifference. Riche, let's go. Wait, Your Highness, I think you should speak with your brother a bit longer. There's no point, but... She still didn't know Theodore's endgame. What had been the point of this? Arnold's scolding had turned him into a trembling little boy. Prince Theodore was trying to make me afraid of his brother, but why? Riche. Coming. Clearly Arnold had no desire to remain, and Riche turned to follow him, resigned to her ignorance. Then she heard Theodore whisper, "It's just as I predicted, sister." A chill ran down her spine. She looked back over her shoulder. Theodore wasn't trembling. He's laughing? The giggles racked his body as he fought to hold them back, face lit with a bewitching darkness. His beauty made Riche's heart breath catch, even as Theodore said in a meek voice, "I'm so sorry, brother." When Arnold looked back, Theodore's expression had returned to one of contrition. "I will go, though I doubt you will forgive me, and sister, I am sorry for frightening you. I promise in the future I will treat you with all the proper respect due to my brother's wife." The fuck is this guy up to? I don't know what the fuck he is. Is he a psychopath? Is that why Arnold doesn't want her around him? That makes sense. Theodore bowed deeply to Riche and smiled at his brother. "Good night, brother. I'm so glad to speak to you after such a long time." Theodore brushed by Arnold on his way out the door, leaving them with nothing but the trembling echoes of that unsettling smile. The two were alone in the chapel now. Arnold broke the silence first. "I believe I told you the same thing, Riche." "That's right, I wasn't supposed to talk to Theodore either. He used your name to summon me. I couldn't just ignore it, and I expected that you'd find time in your busy schedule to accompany me. As if I would ignore the reply to a letter I never even sent. It made sense. After receiving Theodore's forged letter, Elsie had written a reply. "Thank you for the invitation, Your Highness. I shall conduct myself to the chapel at 9:30 tonight, as you have specified." She'd given herself a half hour alone with Theodore, but Arnold had arrived 15 minutes early. I'm thankful he did. I just wish he hadn't had to hear his brother slander him. Something wrong? Riche began to shake her head, but stopped. Maybe she should just ask. "Why did he say those things about you? That you're ruthless?" Arnold glanced away briefly. "Probably because it's true. I've killed countless people on the battlefield. I am not delicate in my manner. My brutality is known far and wide." "I know that. That's not what I meant. I could learn that anywhere," she said. "Then what is it that you want to know?" She wasn't sure how to word this. "Your heart." This was something only Arnold could tell her. "My heart?" "I have heard of your many great feats during the previous war, and I've seen what you were like in battle when those bandits attacked our carriage, but you didn't kill them." Riche's theory at the time had been that it was because they'd been attacked by foreign countrymen. But she doubted that the diabolical Emperor Arnold Hine of her memory would care about this. But after weeks of observation, she wasn't sure of anything anymore. "I was wondering what you were talking about." A shadow fell over his blue eyes. "It appears I've gone too easy on you." He reached toward her, and his black-gloved hand slowly wrapped around her neck. "If you want to survive in this palace, you'll disabuse yourself of this naivete." His fingers dug into her throat. It was only a threat of pressure, but it would take only a bit more to strangle her. And yet Riche was unafraid. "I believe in my own observations and conclusions." "What are you saying? You'd never seen me on the battlefield." "Be that as it may," Riche said, "I believe that the person who cares about my desires is the real you." "What a foolish thing to say," he said in a low, husky voice. "I brought you here to use you." "Yeah, right." Dude, you could have brought anybody if you were that. Yeah, all the more so then if that's the case. Riche gently placed her hand on top of his. She didn't try to pull it away. Instead, she pressed down, exerting more pressure on her own throat. You aren't ruthless at all, husband. Arnold grimaced, breathing out a huff of annoyance. She expected him to push her away, but they just stood there, eyes locked. The moment stretched on, neither of them moving. It was Arnold who broke the silence. Where does this confidence come from? This determination? Riche frowned, puzzled. What do you mean? Sometimes you get this look in your eye, like you're meeting me in the field. It was as if he were looking through her to the past. Riche could say nothing. Arnold took his hand from her neck, cupping her cheek instead. The moonlight shone through the stained glass window, casting the shadow of his lashes over his face. He brushed his thumb against the corner of her eye. You have the gaze of someone ready to die for what she believes in, who will fight for it with every last breath. You look like someone who still believes life is worth living. Riche found herself unable to move. All she could do was look up at Arnold. In her eyes, Arnold seemed to be gazing past her to wars fought long ago, far away. Perhaps he was seeing the faces of the people he had killed? Having to end the life of someone like that, he said, is what I fear most in the world. Riche didn't say a word. So he was afraid sometimes? She knew it. She knew it all along, but no matter what the past contained, or the future held, the man who stood before her was not a merciless killer. Riche swallowed, finding her voice again. Sometimes I feel like I don't belong in this world anymore. It was an incoherent confession, but she said it anyway. She didn't know how else to answer his question. He waited for her to continue. Riche pushed herself on, adding lies to the truth she couldn't offer him. I've had dreams of watching myself die, but I'm not dreaming now. I'm here, breathing and alive, but despite knowing I'm awake, I am still very afraid sometimes. What are you afraid of? Riche breathed out, that I'm already dead, that my life ended in that instant, and this world is nothing but an endless dream. Ooh, yeah, that actually would be a probability here, considering, the fact that she loops. You would think that, when you die, but she loops back. So, either she's dead and that first life killed her, and this is all the dream or something, or some weird, creepy afterlife or something else is at play here. As soon as she spoke, Riche felt a hard pressure on her chest. What's this I'm feeling? Instantly it clicked. She wasn't lying. Deep down there was a part of her that believed this. She didn't want this life to end in death. Her 7th life would be the one she survived. She wanted to do her best to keep on living. But she thought that in her past lives as well. She'd lived through the 2nd and 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th life, always with that truth lurking in the innermost depths of her heart. But no matter what she did, in 5 years, it would all be over. Perhaps this world wasn't even real, and once her thoughts drifted in that direction, all she felt was paralyzing fear. Stop it, Riche squeezed her eyes shut. The fear means nothing. I'll turn it into strength. It doesn't matter. Fear crept up on you faster the longer you stood still, so she looked up at Arnold again. I've made up my mind, she told Arnold. I don't care if this life is a dream or if I'm destined for some awful end, it won't run away. Riche, I'm not what you think, she said. I'm not a warrior, but I am resolute in my determination to be your wife. Destiny would likely never lead her down this path again. After living her life over and over again, she'd experienced firsthand how difficult it was to force events to play out identically. She had to do her utmost now to stop the war, to save herself, and to save Arnold, who might not desire a future soaked in blood after all. That's why I want to understand your heart, she added. He let out a short, scornful laugh, almost inhuman. His hand slipped from her cheek down to her chin. With his other arm, he drew her close by her waist. Ooh! Then a pair of soft lips met hers. Oh, you got his attention. Riche gasped into his kiss, mind struggling to keep up. An eternity seemed to pass before he drew away. He whispered, "You're a fool." But his voice was gentle, full of sympathy, as if he were trying to persuade a child. And it was with a distinct note of loneliness that he said, "You don't need to be resolute to become my wife." Only chapter 4. Oh my god, and we're already over halfway through this book and we're only on chapter 4. Wow. Okay. I will see you guys in the next one.